Hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Craft Cut Magic. So we are actually going to be making a really cute felt wreath today. And we've made some felt projects in the past. Mainly, we've been making banners out of it. So I thought today this would be kind of a nice, fun tweak on some materials that we've used in the past, if you've been following along with the channel. And we will go ahead and show you all the materials and everything to do. So let's jump into the materials that you're going to need. To start off, you're going to want some different colors of felt. So I actually have 4. I have 3 different kinds of blue here, and then I also have a sheet of kind of firmer white. So I know it's kind of difficult to see, but this is a little less flimsy than these are. We also have one of our grip mats, and you can see this one is green, unlike the normal light blue one that we usually use. And I've used a light green mat a couple of times, and usually this is what is considered a standard grip mat. And I just find that the standard grips are just sticky enough to hold onto the felt, but it doesn't keep the felt and tear it apart when you try to take it off. Other materials that you're going to need for this project, you're probably going to want a brayer of some kind or a roller, however you want to pronounce it. But I like this tool just because it helps me stick down the edges of the felt. You're also going to want a hot glue gun or some kind of sticking device, whether it be normal glue or, well, really I think your 2 options are normal glue or hot glue. But you're just going to want any kind of adhesive that you can find that is going to stick felt pieces together. You're also probably going to want some kind of twine, yarn, rope, and this is going to be so that you can hang your project on the door. You can see this is kind of some macrame cording. I'm not quite sure if I'm actually going to use this brand yet, but we have it just in case, and we'll see when we get to the final part of our project how big our wreath is and what we're going to need in terms of our loop. And then of course, beyond that, you're going to want your Cricut Machine, you're going to want it plugged in, and then you're going to want a device that has Cricut Design Space installed on it. Now, if you've looked at the title, you're going to know already that Design Space has changed a little bit on the canvas since we last were working on our projects. And I'm going to take you through those changes, and I'm going to kind of quickly show you how things have changed. Honestly, not much has actually changed, just the placement of things are in different spots. And I'll show you what that means when we switch over to the computer, which we are actually going to do right now. So one more thing before we actually switch over to the computer is that you're also probably now, and this is completely optional, but you might want to have a rotary blade cutter for your felt or a fine point blade. Now the fine point blade, as many of you probably know or have seen from previous projects we've done together, the fine point blade is already installed in your machine, but I prefer the rotary blade for cutting with felt. So if you have one handy and you have one that you can use, I recommend that you use that for your felt projects. But if not, it's just one of those optional tools that I think just makes life easier. Okay, now we will switch over to the computer and get started.
All right, so here we are. We're back onto Design Space. Here is the home page. And what's nice is that, I know you probably saw it in the title video, Design Space has made some updates. The nice thing is that nothing has changed here on the home page. You're still going to be coming over to this top right corner, and you're going to just select New Project, Blank Canvas. From here, you're going to see that you still have images opening up, and you can see that there are suggestions, shapes, but you're probably going to see right off the bat here, all of your tools and stuff that used to be up here on the top part of the screen, they're not there anymore. Don't worry though, they're not gone, they're just in a different location. And we're going to go over all of that as we go with our project. So just bear with me, we'll get to all of that here shortly. So, since we are doing a winter project today, The first thing I actually want is a circle shape because the project that we're making today is, as I said, a felt wreath. So I'm just going to input this circle onto our page, and now we can start to see our tools and how they have changed up here on top. So really quick, you can see that here is your edit tool. You still have your undo and redo button. You have the type of cut you're doing, the color of your material, your width and your height of your shape or your image. You have the arrange tool, and you have the two ways that you can flip, which is a horizontal or a vertical flip. And that's pretty much everything basic that you need. For the more complex things such as offset, that's where the edit is. And so this is how you can position. Here's another way to find your arrange tool, your rotate. Here's another part of your flip, and then the effects of offsetting, sticker, and warp if you need them. Now, we probably will use offset at least once, I think maybe today in our project. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a good tool and we use it often enough that it's good for you to know where it is for our projects. Now, if for some reason that was a little too fast for you to follow, don't worry. We're still going to be using a lot of this throughout our project today. So if for some reason you didn't catch everything and I went too fast, the nice thing is we're still going to go through all this. You're still going to see where everything is at as we go along. So you'll get the hang of this new layout for Design Space, no problem. So with our circle, we are now going to bring it to size, and you might see that you now have more decimal points available to you to get more precise measurements on your projects, which is fantastic. I, however, am just going to make this width today for our circle, since it is just kind of a outline, something just to kind of designate what I want at the end of the day. We're not going to actually cut the circle. I'm just going to make it 9.2 because really all I want is the outside line to follow along with. I'm going to move it a little bit as well for all of our different project pieces. Now from here, I'm actually going to change our circle color to something lighter, but still something that I'm going to be able to see easily on our canvas. So I'm just going to go with this light gray. Now that we have our circle, our outline base for our wreath in a size that we like, now we can go ahead and we can start inputting our images. Now, since this is a winter wreath, most of the images that we're going to be using today are actually going to be snowflakes. So we're just going to come over here to images, and we're just going to type in snowflake. Or you can do snowflakes as well. It should come up with the same thing. And now you're going to see a ton of different styles of snowflakes. I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to filter by free images. Now today, for this project in particular, I am going to need 9 different kinds of snowflakes. The reason is because we're going to take each of these snowflakes that we have right here, we're going to change their sizing to the way that we would like them to be. And we're going to be doing 3 of each kind of snowflake. So you can just duplicate and you can place them however you would like. And as we go along with all 9 of our kinds of snowflakes, I'm also going to go ahead and change the color as well as we go along. So you can see this is also black, and I'm going to just change this to blue, and this will just help us to kind of find the different kinds of felt colors that we are going to be using in our project at the end of the day. Now in the beginning you saw I had multiple different kinds of blue fabrics, well, blue felts and kind of white as well. We're going to just, for now, differentiate all of our snowflakes with different colors, and then we can go back and make it more like how it will be at the end. But we'll get there when we get there. For now, just start by placing all of your snowflakes and adjust them to how you would like them to appear onto your wreath base. So let's get started with that, and we'll come back and I'll tell you more about the project here in a minute. So we have the base of our wreath pretty much all set up now, with all of our snowflakes wrapping around the edges, and you can always maneuver some things around if you think you're going to get more coverage and more stability one way compared to another. I feel like there are some things that need to get a little bit tweaked here just to give a little more stability, and again, you can play around with this until you are completely happy with how it all looks. And just know also that this is just kind of a rough outline of how it's going to be. All of these snowflakes are actually going to cut individually, so when we actually go to put together our project at the end of this, we're going to be left with tons of different kinds of snowflakes and not really any way of being able to figure out how it goes. So we probably actually will cut out that circle down below just so that we have an outline of what we're supposed to be doing, but we're not going to use it at the end. It's just going to be our guide, and that's just going to be helpful for me because I know that I'm terrible at making circles when I don't have a guide. So if you're really good and you feel confident with making a circle, you're not going to need to cut out that circle underneath. I just probably will to help me out. Now that we have all of our snowflakes onto our canvas, the last thing that I want to try to give this wreath a little more stability when we're completely done with it is we're going to put a nice cute little winter snowman right into the middle of our project. So I'm going to attach a snowman in here. We're going to make him holly jolly in a way. We're not really in Christmas anymore, but you know what? Snowmen are still fun, right? Even if we're out of the holidays. And I like how big he is right here. And so now I'm just going to take the snowman and we're going to drag him all the way pretty much to the bottom. And you could always, of course, just hit arrange and move this one to the back and then move it forward one. I just decided to do it that way today for ease. And here we go. This is how our wreath is pretty much going to look. And you can also hide that circle as well. And we can change the background color of our canvas so you have a little bit better of an idea. So this is how it's supposed to look come the end of our project. And we're going to put a nice little hanging piece up at the top so it can go on a door. And I really like the way that it's looking right now. And again, tweak it, change it around as much as you'd like so that you get exactly what you're hoping for with your project. But now that everything looks set and ready to go, we are actually ready to go ahead and save and then make our project. So let's start by saving our project and then we can continue. Now, if you've been following along with the channel for a little bit, or if you've had prior experience with the Cricut Machine, you probably know exactly where the save is. It's just right up here in the top right corner. You're just going to hit save and you're going to title your project. So I'm just going to title this Snowman Winter Felt Wreath. And it's not a paper project. I'm not going to add it to any kind of collection, and I'm not going to create a new one either at the moment, but in the future I could. So for now that we have the title, we're just going to go ahead and click save. Wonderful. And now that we have all of this figured out, the great thing is that with it being saved, you're not worried about losing this project, and you can always save earlier if for some reason you have to go away from your project for a while, you need to take a break, if it's frustrating you or anything, but you still want your progress saved, you can always save prior than when I save my project. This is just usually when you want to make sure 100% for certain you have everything saved. Now remember I told you that I was going to change the colors right here of our different snowflakes so that it would match up more with the felt colors that I have, and it will make it a little bit easier for when we go ahead and we cut out our project. I'm going to switch these colors now, and then we're going to be ready to actually go ahead and start cutting our project. This is just going to be a step that's helpful for me in the future, so I know which snowflakes are going to cut in what color, and I can adjust where things are placed based off of that now rather than in the future. Alright, so I actually did a little bit more than just messing with the colors. You can see that our wreath now looks different from how it looked before. We still have all 9 of our snowflakes. The colors are now more representative of what I actually have in terms of the colors of my felt. And just to let you know kind of what I did is I went through each snowflake kind individually and I changed the color to one of 3 kinds, and one of 4 kinds actually, and I'll just show you kind of how I did it. Is I had these 3 colors of blue right here, which were pretty darn good representatives of what felt colors I have, and then white of course as well that we have. So the snowman is white, and I went through each round of snowflakes, all 9 of them, and grouped, well, not necessarily grouped, but I shifted and I collected all 3 of the same kind of snowflake and changed the color to one of those kinds of blues or one of those whites. After I had done that, I went through and I just made sure that some of the colors weren't necessarily as overlapping on top of one another. So you can see right here we have this specific kind of snowflake, this one right here, and 2 out of the 3 are actually in white. There's one right here, here's the second one in white, but this one right here I have as light blue just because it works better right here instead of the white. And you can also see that all of the colors are on different layers as well within this. And this is a good example of how this is hopefully going to look at the end of the day when I do this project. So all of these colors should be on different layers and everything as we go along. And I will reference this picture and how this is all set up when we actually go ahead and start to assemble our project. So just keep all of these little things in mind as you go to create this project. It will help you hopefully a lot in the long run when you are creating your project. Now that everything is the exact way that I would like, just make sure, double check that you have it saved. And now we can go ahead and we can continue on to finally making our project. So let's switch over to that. Now, I mentioned this before in one of the videos that I put out right near the holidays in my Christmas card craft video that I put out to show you how to do a holiday card. Cricut has kind of changed a little bit, so if you already have your Cricut machine turned on, you could already be attached to it through Bluetooth if you just select right up here. And you can see right now, of course, my maker is not currently on, but it gives you that option so you can already be connected to your machine and skip that step when we are making our project. Now, at this point, make sure that you have all of your materials set up kind of ready to go and near you when you have your Cricut. Make sure your Cricut is plugged in, and now you can start turning it on if you haven't already. Open it up, start making sure that you have enough space around the back of your machine so you're not going to hit anything. Also make sure that you have the right kinds of blades and tools available to you, and make sure that you have your device nearby so that you can have that strong Bluetooth connection and have it set up in a place where it's also not going to get hit by your machine mat. I know that was a lot, but this is mostly stuff that I cover in every video. At the end of the day, make sure you have everything ready to go in terms of supplies. Make sure that your Bluetooth is turned on your device, and make sure that your Cricut is turned on. As long as you have those 3 things, everything else that I just said pretty much falls under those categories. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit on the green make button right here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to make our project. So here we go. Now, one of the things that show up now compared to previous times is now you have, and more than likely you've seen this, but you have the choice from on mat, without your mat, or on a card mat for your project. I always do on mat, and our mat is specifically a 12 by 12. You could apply this selection to all future projects, but just in case you ever find you have smart materials on hand, or you are in a place where you have that card mat available to you, you don't necessarily want to select it for all of your future projects unless you know with 100% certainty that 99% of the time you're not going to be using any of these other options. I do have some smart materials that I've gathered over time, so I know that there is a possibility that I'll have smart materials to use. So, just to keep myself open, I just always select this each time. Once you have it selected, just double check on mat 12 by 12 inch. You're good to go ahead and confirm. So now our mats have sorted into colors, and this is where it's going to get semi-tricky, but hopefully not too bad, because what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we're going to double check and make sure that everything will be okay for when we cut on our material. So let me kind of show you what I mean by that. So right here on our light blue mat, right here, you can see we have 3, 4, 5 different snowflakes in this very light blue color. The thing is that our material isn't actually a 12 by 12 inch. We are working more with a letter-sized 8.5 by 11 piece of felt. So I'm just going to select that, and you can see it automatically changes it so it will fit. Now this is something we want to do for these other colors as well, just to make sure that at the end of the day we don't accidentally go off our material with all of our different kinds of snowflakes. If you want to try and save felt, you can always move and adjust so that hopefully you can save some space. So for example, you can adjust, maybe move some things up and around so that point isn't necessarily going to intersect with everything, but you can also see that sometimes it doesn't necessarily work out in your favor either. I've been able to do both ways, so you can always just maneuver around, try to save yourself some material if you'd like. If you don't need to worry about that, then you can definitely skip that step. But for me, I just like trying to make it a little less wasteful just in case I do need this in the future. But again, at the end of the day, sometimes it's just less of a hassle to go with what the Cricut setup says. Alright, so now that we have all of our pages ready to go, all of our felt, now we get to go ahead and continue. So just make sure that everything looks set and ready to go here. You can double check everything just to make sure everything's placed how you'd like. And then we can go ahead and we can hit continue. Now from here, we're going to start to set the base materials. So you can see that I already have the felt that I'm going to be using, and this is going to be just the setting that I use for felt. And so you see it says felt wool fabric, and that's the material that we're going to be using. Now, like I said earlier when we were going over all the supplies that you need, you can cut felt technically in 2 ways. You can either do it with a fine point blade, or you can do it with a rotary blade. Now, if you've been following along with me for a while, whenever we do felt projects, I always say go with the rotary blade if you have one available to you, just because it cuts way better, in my opinion, than the fine point blade does. So if you can, switch to the rotary blade, hit apply. And so now from here, all we need to do is go ahead and put our felt color that we're going to be using down onto our mat. And from there, we will go ahead and load it into our machine and everything. Now, one thing I always tell you to be careful of, make sure that you know what material you're cutting out or that it has selected. So right here, we have a felt page. We might want this page instead, actually, right here. So I actually probably do want the white first, or even better, we'll do the cardstock cutout for the base, and then we will cut out our felt. But the same things apply. When we go and to cut our felt, you're going to change what base material you're using, and then you're going to edit the tools. For cardstock, you can't edit the tools, but this is going to be good for us to start cutting out our base. So we're actually going to do the cardstock first, and from there we will do our felt after that. So we're going to switch back over to the camera now, and we will start to cut out our project.
All right, so we're getting ready to go ahead and cut our project. Now, something that I told you about while we were on the computer, but I completely forgot to show you in my list of materials at the start is you're probably going to potentially want to cut out a piece of cardstock or a piece of paper in general to be your guide for this. So as we were just doing on the computer, you saw that we needed a piece of cardstock, probably best to use 12 by 12 inch if you have it, which I do. And I'm just going to take a color that I'm fairly sure I will not be using for any project in the near future, like this brown right here. And that is going to be our guide for making the circle of our project, because as I said, and I'll say it again, I am very terrible at actually being able to do free-drawn circles. So let's cut out this piece of cardstock first. So I'm just going to, number one, check the stickiness of my mat, because as you can see, this is not the one that I necessarily showed you in the first part of the video. And honestly, it doesn't seem like it's going to stick like I would like it to. So we're just going to pull out this one. And you'll see when I use the felt as well, we're going to have a different mat for that, just because I've used a separate mat already for a bunch of my felt projects. And so we're going to be using that mat again because it's already got felt all over it. Move your materials, and then, like I said earlier, make sure that your Cricut is pulled out so that behind you, you can see I have a little bit of a wall right there. You don't want your mat to hit that. So I always pull my machine out, and let me change angles real quick. All right, so with the change in angle, now you can see I've gone ahead and I've stuck down our cardstock to our mat. I'm going to go ahead and load our material over here with the flashing load button. It's going to measure our mat. And now just double check two things on your computer or whichever device you have Design Space on. Double check and make sure that you're actually cutting out your template and that you have selected light cardstock as your material. As long as both of those things are selected, you can now hit on the flashing go button. Perfect. So now that that's done, I'm going to open it. Ooh, didn't quite cut all the way through, so I'm actually going to cut it again. I seem to be having this problem lately with cardstock. Now, one thing that could mean, if for some reason things that you used to cut on a certain setting are no longer cutting the way that it used to, you should check your blade first and foremost. Just make sure that there's not any debris clogging it. The second thing that you might need to do is you might need to actually change out your blade. I've been using this blade since I got this machine, and so it might be starting to get a little bit more dull. However, I'm not quite ready to part with this one yet. After all, it is a very nice blade. So we're just gonna keep rolling with this. And we will get it to work. Nice thing is, it's just a template. All right, so it's starting to break off. So I think we're at a good point where I can take this off. Now, before we move on to our felt, I'm going to cover up this mat over here for one. Get the protective cover. And I know that was out of frame, so sorry about that. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take one of my tools right nearby. And honestly, I'm just gonna more or less rip this circle off. Now, if this was for a physical part of our final product, I don't recommend you do this. I would try again and change your setting or change your blade. But since this is just a template piece, I feel just fine just tearing it off, more or less. So it's not necessarily the prettiest circle, but I can always take some scissors and fix that as well. So here you can kind of see it has some flyaways, but the nice thing is that it's going to serve its purpose for letting us know what our outline is for our wreath. Okay, so now it looks a little bit better. Can't say it's spectacular, but it's better than it was. So now that we have our circle, we can continue on with our cutting. So now everything else that we cut out is going to be with felt. So you can kind of see, and if you were following along with projects that had felt in the past, yes, this is the mat that we did the candy corn garland on back in Halloween. So my first mat is actually supposed to be white. So I'm going to grab my white, and always remember to line up on the top as best as you can. Now, you might have noticed that my white felt is longer than the mat, and that's okay. Don't freak out. Just because you said that you were going to use a 12 by 12 inch mat doesn't necessarily mean that your material is 12 by 12 inches. So if for some reason you don't have a 12 by 24 inch, or honestly, if you don't want to dirty up your 12 by 24 inch mat just with felt, I totally get you. That's why I use my 12 by 12 inch mats, because I just have more of these. So double check, make sure that you set your material to felt. Change your blade setting, your tools, inside of the computer or your device, and then we're going to change out our blade. So remember, you open up clamp B, you change out your fine point blade for your rotary blade if you are doing this part. And now that you have the correct tools loaded, you can go ahead and hit the flashing load unload button. And you're going to repeat that for every time that you cut out with felt. So now that that is all taken care of, we are going to start cutting out our felt. And we're just going to repeat this for each piece of felt. Okay, so we've cut out all of our felt, and as you can see, I got all of our pieces weeded out and set up. Now, I want to be completely honest with everyone here. This took a while to cut out. It took over 2 hours, and that's probably just because I was using the rotary blade instead of the fine point blade for my Cricut, but just keep that in mind with your project. The more detailed you get, the more time it might take to cut out, especially with different materials. So just keep that kind of time frame in mind. So now that everything's cut out, I got things weeded, and you also might notice that some of these snowflakes look a little bit different than how you saw on Design Space, and that's just because some of the finer details didn't turn out per se, so we adjusted. And what's nice is that no two snowflakes are alike, and this is going to kind of hold true for our project as well. So we adjusted and we changed and we accounted for happy little accidents and mistakes that occur, but I still think that this looks good overall. And so I went ahead and I took my template, and you can kind of see it underneath right here, that the cardstock circle, and I put it down right here. And then this is the layout that I had on Design Space when I was looking to see if I was happy with how this project was going to cut out. And so this is just kind of how everything is set. So now I have my hot glue gun over here warming up. And just always remember that when you work with hot glue, it is, as it says, it's hot glue. So just be cautious with it. Make sure you take proper precaution. Know that it's hot and it can burn you if you don't handle it properly. So just kind of keep that in mind. If your hands are a little more heat tolerant, you might not have to worry as much, but please prevent yourself from getting burns and take all the precautionary measures that you need, because I know everyone's hands are different in terms of heat tolerance. So we can kind of see my glue gun is running a little bit, but I think we're getting close to being warmed up. And all I'm really going to be doing is I'm going to lift each piece individually, and we're going to put glue on the back and we're going to stick it on, and then we'll just do that for all of these pieces. And then I'm also going to see how supported this is. I might need something along the back. I'm not quite sure yet, just because some of the blue felt wasn't necessarily the strongest in terms of, well, I can kind of show you with the white. So you can see here's our snowman right here, and it's pretty firm. I mean, it bends a little bit, but it's not super bad, just enough to be pliable, but not enough that when it stands by itself, it falls over. And I know you can't see that necessarily too well, but it stands by itself. Some of these blue snowflakes, for example, this snowflake right here, these pieces aren't very supported, so I'm thinking of different ways that I might be able to add support to the back. And it might just come down to a little bit of hot glue. I might need to grab maybe some toothpicks to support, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm really thinking that hot glue will be enough and we won't have to grab any further supplies, but just know for yourself, the more your felt can pretty much stand on its own, the better it's probably going to be for a wreath project, unless you're planning on putting a base behind it. So with that being said, let's just start to glue together our wreath. Alright, so I just wanted everyone to see how it's turning out so far. And so far so good. This is actually the back side. I just went ahead and I pried off the circle, our template from the table. I did have it stuck down with a piece of tape just to keep it from moving while we were working with all of our pieces. And once I got that off, you can kind of see there are a couple of places where the cardstock actually did stick to the felt wreath, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to fix that now, because the nice thing is this is the back, and we still have to put our adorable snowman in here. So we're going to go ahead now, and we're going to, number one, make sure this still looks like a circle. And the second thing we're going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and now I'm going to reinforce this with some more hot glue, just for some of these more flimsy pieces, so that hopefully when we turn around to the front side, everything is going to look nice and beautiful. All right, so now you can kind of see I've put some support in, so these pieces aren't as flimsy anymore. And I might come back and do a little bit more just to make it a little more secure here in a minute. But right now I want to put our snowman on. So I kind of have an idea of how I want this to go. And I'm thinking I want it to be like this in our cute wreath. So now that I know where I want this positioned, I'm actually just going to go ahead and I'm going to start to hot glue this down. And this will give our wreath some more support as well, which will be great for when we flip it over. So let's get into that. Right, so as you just kind of saw in the time lapse, I went ahead and I did some more structure to the back of our snowman when I glued him on, and just to our wreath in general. So now it's not as flimsy. I mean, it does still bend a little bit. We also went ahead and we made the little tie for our wreath as well. And so all I did is I actually decided, you know, that twine that I showed you at the beginning of the video, well, I told you I might change it if it didn't turn out that that was going to be a good size, and it wasn't. So I just grabbed some yarn and I just took 3 lines of the same length and I just created a loose braid and I knotted it on both sides, glued them together, and glued it to the back of our snowman. So now we have our finished hanging project. And you can go ahead and if you did use hot glue, you can go ahead and take out some of those little glue hairs if you see them. And I can see I still have quite a few in here, so I'm going to take them out. But as you can see this part right here? Normally it would have been flopping over, so now it's more firm. So I'm very glad with how that turned out. Yeah, so anytime you see, and that is one of the drawbacks to having to use a hot glue gun, is that it does create these little strings as you go along. But the nice part is too is that they're pretty easy to take out as well. It's just a matter of finding them and taking them off of your project as you see them. Perfect, and now we have our final hanging project. And here is the final project, all done and hung up on a door. It's actually very cute. I think it turned out very good despite all of the little quirks and troubleshooting that we had to do in order to make it look good. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this project just as much as I did. I hope you guys enjoyed following along with me today for this video. If you did like it, I hope you'll consider giving the video a like, maybe subscribe to the channel. I try really hard to be pretty consistent with posting videos. I haven't done too great lately, but I'm hoping to get back on track now, more in the new year. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.